Hey, how y'all doing? It's Rico. Hope everybody is doing well. Just came to you tonight to tell you my personal testimony. Um, it's very simple. I mean, I grew up in the church, so um, haven't really had a crazy interaction. A crazy long drawn out story, um, like what some people do. Honestly, mine's very simple. I remember back in 2017. Um, my son was born with a hole in his heart. And I remember my wife calling me and telling me that because they had just left the doctor. And I remember having to stay strong on the phone with her to make sure she was comforted. Um, but I mean, I needed it also. I had to stay strong for her. And I remember getting off the phone with her and immediately calling my dad. And like I told y'all in the last video, my dad, has been a preacher for 30 years. And I remember him telling me, different scriptures to encourage me and talked about 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 6, when it said that David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. David had went to war with his men, and they came back, and their women and their kids were gone, and the men were mad because they felt they had been at war all this time, and they came home and nothing was left. Um, so the Bible says they were getting ready to stone David. And the Bible says David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And my dad told me that scripture. And he explained a few other scriptures to me. Um, in that particular moment, um, I prayed and I thanked God for that, the closing of that hole. I saw God work in that particular time. I mean, I was so scared because I didn't know, what it meant to have a hole in your heart. I mean, we were new parents. We didn't know what was going on. Um, and I began to lose faith because I knew that, hey, I remember when my wife said she was pregnant, and I prayed and prayed for it to be a boy, and God told me that it would be a boy. Um, and then he told me, a couple of things that he would do when he got older, and so I kind of had already had a lot of confirmation about my son, and a hole in his heart wasn't one of the things that God had confirmed with me. So it was something I was very angry about. I was quick to turn my back on God and question him and say, why would you let my son be born with this hole? But anyway, long story short, I remember taking my son up to this Dr. Ramirez in Montgomery, Alabama. Um, and we sat in there, and he said, well, it's Mr. Lewis and Mrs. Lewis. It's not a hole, it's actually a flap. Everything's going to be okay. Bring him back after he turns 1 year old, and we'll look at it again. So we kept praying, we kept believing God. And I remember going back 6 months later when he turned 1 year old, and the flap wasn't even there anymore. The doctor said, well, it corrected itself. And I remember looking at my wife and just bursting out in tears, knowing that God heard our prayer. He closed his heart up for my baby boy, and if he can do that, then surely he's worth submitting to wholeheartedly. So that day I rededicated myself to God back in 2018, and I've lived for him since. That right there really made my faith grow stronger. That was an interaction with God, knowing that he heard my prayer and that he came down and touched my son in Little Alabama, and made his heart whole, completed it, the work that he started with it, and made the heart function like it was supposed to. So that was something that really ignited my faith and ignited my wife's faith. And that's our testimony, and I'm sticking to it. That's something that I've been able to tell and let people know that God is a healer. People say that, God's not real and all this stuff. I know him to be real. I know him to be a healer. I know him to be a God that listens to his people. I know him to be a God that not only listens to his people, but moves on the behalf of a sinner. Listen, I've been in the church all my life, but at that particular time in 2017, I had backslidden so much. I had done all these things, but even in my worst moment, even when I was in the midst of my sin, God heard my prayer and he saved my son. He closed the heart up, and we did not have to worry about anything else. And the doctor visits were free. So God helped me see that he is real, and not only that he is real, but that I can trust him. That's my testimony. I love y'all. I look forward to hearing y'all's.